Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Over the Net. Today, we have Mizzou middle blocker Regan Haith with us. Regan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good, and I'm sure that you got to be feeling pretty good over the last month. A 9-match winning streak, including 2 more matches won this week against Georgia and South Carolina. Over the past week, you had 11 kills. You combined with Colleen Finney for 27 between the two of you. What's allowed you to be so effective on the attack?
I think that we really just connect with our setters really well, and that gives us a lot of confidence just to go out and swing. And I just think that we prepare well and find the shots we need to.
And something that I've really noticed from your play this season is just the consistency. You're hitting over 400, leading the team in blocks. It seems like whenever I look at, the box score for a particular match, you've always got like at least 3, 4, 5 blocks, at least like 4 or 5 kills at a really efficient clip. What's allowed you to be not only that efficient, but also that consistent?
I think we practice really hard on just coming in with the same mindset every single day. And, I try to do my job as best as I can. And I think that the training that we do just allows me to perform at my best.
And then something that was really noticeable out of that South Carolina match, the team ending up with 11 blocks, a season high, the first time that the Tigers were in double digits this year. What was the key to success that allowed you to really get that block total up in that match in a way that you haven't before?
I think the whole week of practice we're really working on, pressing back into the court and working on our trail hand, especially for middles. So just focusing on that the entire week, I think allowed Colleen and I just to go out and ball and just play really well with, just a lot of confidence.
And is that something that you're expecting to be kind of an emphasis for the team moving forward to the end of the season, or something that you're, expecting to continue?
Yeah, I think we always want to get as many blocks as we can. And I think just watching a lot of film and just going right at the right spot just allows us to do that.
And then not only the South Carolina match, but impressive performance against Georgia as well, going up against one of the best in the SEC, and Sophie Fisher ended up limiting her to 9 kills on only a 150 hitting percentage. How did you game plan to shut her down, and then how did you implement that?
I think the whole week of practice, our coaches do a really good job at imitating the players. So I remember Cole and Wendell, we would always have them on the opposing side of the net, just imitating her. So we were really ready to see where she hits, and just being able to work around that really helped us to stop her.
And then I think that, you talk about the assistants, every assistant on the team and Coach Sullivan herself as well played either collegiate and or professional volleyball. How big of a benefit is it in practice and elsewhere to have that professional experience?
I think it's huge, and especially for our middle coach. I think it's just a huge experience and just blessing that we get to see her and every single thing we do in film, and she just always helps us to see the game differently because she played at it, and I think she just really does a great job at breaking down the game. And I think all of our coaches really just break down the game really well for us.
Yeah, Coach Ariel Wilson, 4-time national champion on maybe the greatest dynasty ever in college volleyball. What has she been able to teach you about just gutting out matches, winning those? Because obviously she just had a tremendous amount of success in her collegiate career.
Yeah. I think she really emphasizes on our transition and just always being available. And she's taught me so much since I've been here, since I got here in January. So I think transition is a big thing, and just helping us find ways to score differently. She really helps us a lot with that.
And then, we've talked about the defense, but that's really been, for me, the storyline of this winning streak. You look at statistics-wise, opposing hitting percentage were kind of towards the bottom of the SEC at the beginning of conference play, but now you're fourth in the conference in opposing hitting percentage during SEC matches, which is obviously a massive improvement. What's led to that change?
I think, our defense, I feel like we train that the most in our gym. We always want relentless effort, and it's just a crazy amount of digs in our block. And I think our just backcourt does a great job at just digging everything. And our coaches do a great job of scouting that and telling them where to go. So I think it's just an all-out effort.
And then outside of the defense, what do you think has been the biggest change in this team from the beginning of the year to now?
I just think our chemistry is really good, and I think building upon wins is really special. I think, when you continue to win, your work ethic becomes even stronger, and I think every single day of practice, we're not becoming complacent. We're trying to get better each day. So I think just the level of intensity has gone up in the gym, and I think that's what allows us to continue to do well.
And then speaking of that beginning of the season, you opened it at the Blue Jay Invitational in Omaha in Nebraska, your home state. And I was there. I remember you had a pretty big crowd of supporters there. I'm guessing family and friends. What was it like getting to play in front of them as you opened the season with a new team?
I think it meant the world. Just coming back to, where I grew up in Nebraska and seeing all of my family. I didn't know that many of my family members and friends were going to come. So I just think it was just really special to come home to. And I think it made me play more free just because that was my first game at Mizzou. So I think it just allowed me to play how I am.
What was your initial reaction when you saw just kind of the size of that group of supporters? Because from what I remember, they took up half of a section.
Yeah. I have a pretty big family, so it's nothing abnormal for all my cousins and my grandparents to come, but it was just really it just made me smile and made me feel really appreciated that they all just come and support me no matter where I am and what I'm doing.
So, we talked about you grew up in Nebraska, but specifically in Lincoln. So my question, did you grow up going to Nebraska volleyball matches? And just how big was it for you to grow up in what I'm guessing almost everybody in the volleyball world would say is the state of volleyball?
Yeah. I remember going to all of the Nebraska games when we were little. I remember staying after the games and getting all the autographs. So I think it's crazy to see pictures of all my siblings and us with John Cook and Danny Musboom Kelly and just all of the players that were there. So I think Nebraska is always that's been the sport, volleyball. And I think they do a great job of just allowing the sport to just thrive there. And they have a lot of clubs to just bring out the game of volleyball.
So, growing up, were you a big Nebraska fan going to all those games, or did you have another team?
Yeah, we were Nebraska fans. I think it's hard not to be when you live right there because there's not really much else to do in Nebraska. So I think a lot of people are Nebraska fans there.
And then this is going slightly off-road, but, when I am doing research for the interviews, I look at different things, including social media. And there was one thing that caught my eye on Twitter. It was a repost of an ESPN tweet in 2022 about KU men's basketball winning a national title. So I have to ask, were you a KU basketball fan growing up?
My parents and my dad was a big KU fan. They still are, but I actually was born in Kansas and grew up there for a little bit. So
okay.
When we were little, we always used to go to KU basketball games. But now I'm a Mizzou fan, so yeah, definitely have changed.
No, it's interesting to see. There are a couple of people I feel like on the team that have some KU connections, which has kind of been interesting. But the other one I found, which was interesting, was I think it was the first two posts you ever had were about Zendaya and Wizards of Waverly Place. So Were you a big Disney Channel kid growing up, and what was your favorite show?
Yeah, I was a big Disney Channel fan when I was younger. I think my favorite show was probably Wizards of Waverly Place, just a classic one.
And then, I believe Selena Gomez was the main person in that, right? So,
Yeah,
have you followed any of other acting stuff like Only Murders in the Building?
I haven't watched that, but I've heard it's really good.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's a good one. But moving towards the academic side of things, so it looks like majoring in business or accounting. What led to your interest in that field?
I think, I'm kind of creative, so I wanted to go into something a little more broad because I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I was just entering college. So my major right now is business with an emphasis in marketing. So I think, the opportunities are endless in that. So I'm really just trying to figure out what sparks my interest and I don't know, seeing where that goes.
And then, do you have a particular interest in like the marketing field? Are you looking to continue in sports after your career and go in a different direction?
I haven't really decided on that yet. But I think marketing, or if I decide to continue to play volleyball, it just depends on what I decide in the upcoming months.
And then, speaking of decisions, obviously you had a pretty big decision during the off season going into the portal. Can you tell us what your portal process was like? The decision to go into it, look at your options, and then what led you to Mizzou?
Yeah. When I put my name in the portal, it was, obviously really scary just seeing all the things that could go wrong. Like, I don't know if I was going to play volleyball again, just all like the negative thoughts. But I had a lot of schools reach out to me and, I felt comfortable with like where I was at. But I remember reaching out to Mizzou because we played them in preseason my sophomore year. So I just was like, what the heck? They watched me play because we played against them. And I think just like reaching out and like my club reached out to them, I think that just sparked the interest in me. And now I'm here.
Yeah, I think you had, is it like 6 kills and 4 blocks in that match?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you reached out to Mizzou, had the interest. When did you know that Mizzou was the right place for you?
Honestly, I think just coming on a visit and connecting with the coaches, I just knew that this place was really special. And just seeing the atmosphere that they created and just believing in what Dawn was building at the time, I think I just fell in love with everything they were explaining to me and just talking about volleyball. I just fell in love with it.
And then, did you know anything about Dawn Sullivan or the coaching staff before entering the portal? I know obviously she has Illinois State connections as well. Was that something you were aware of?
No, not right away. I figured it out once I started researching Mizzou and Dawn a little more, but definitely not right away.
Okay. And then obviously now you've made the decision, you're joining Mizzou, and you've been really effective pairing with Colleen Finney, in the middle. What's it been like teaming up with her, getting to learn from somebody who's been on the team for another year, kind of gelling with the team? And then, looks like you're set up to be that veteran at middle blocker next year.
Yeah, I think Colleen, she just does a great job of leading, and she gives everyone that is playing with her and everyone that's younger than her just confidence in what she's doing and what she's wanting others to do. So I think just seeing that in the spring and seeing how just impactful she was, I think that made me want to get even more better. And I just remember like asking her like more questions about training in the middle and just trying to learn as much from her as possible.
And then one of the big storylines to come out of this week, specifically on Monday, getting ranked as a top 25 team for the first time this season. You were really, really close the past 2 weeks. So how does it feel to now be officially in the top 25?
I think it just shows how relentless we are. And, it's great to see us in the top 25. And I think we're all really happy, but, that's not where we're stopping. We're continuing to want even more higher in the rankings. So I think that just kind of fuels our fire that we can do it. And we still have a lot of work to do.
And then obviously the most important rankings for volleyball are going to be the selection committee. And right now, RPI of 17, obviously opportunities to increase that the rest of the year. But bracketology recently came out, had the team as a 5 seed. So getting really close to that possibility of hosting a regional. What would hosting the opening rounds mean for this program?
I think it would be huge. I think Hearnes is a great place and a great atmosphere. So I know if all the fans showed up, and I just think it would be a really just a great atmosphere to play in, and just having the support from the community would be great. And I know we all love to play at home. So.
And you've got a really big home matchup on Friday against number 21 Florida, one of the best offenses in the country. It should be really exciting match, two of, I think, the 10 best offenses by hitting percentage in the nation. What are going to be the keys to beating the Gators and slowing down that offense especially?
I think just our defensive effort and everything that we try to control our side of the game, and just being relentless, because, they're a good team, but so are we. So just continuing to be all out and watch a lot of film and just preparing very well for them.
And that's something that I've really noticed is an emphasis on game plan, focusing on film. How much time would you say you spend each week, looking at game film, prepping, listening to the coaches talk about, okay, here are the specific things we need to do to get the win?
Yeah, I think our coaches start obviously a lot earlier in weeks. I don't really know when they start preparing for their film, but they try to break it down really simple for us so we don't have to worry too much. But we definitely are watching film the whole week and meeting with our positional coach to watch more film. So I don't know how many hours a week, but we definitely do a lot.
And can you give an example of, what's one thing that you were expecting heading into that South Carolina match, for you specifically? I know we've talked about, it was after the match, Colleen Finney had said they kind of expected that slide attack of hers might work pretty well against South Carolina. But what's something that you were prepared for and ended up playing out during that match?
For me or for
you, and then if you want to share something about the team as a whole.
I think being really available and just being available in transition was one of our keys that we wanted to do. So if Colleen was running a slide or if I was trying to get on a C, I think that allowed the middles on their side to stay with us, and then it opened up more holes for our pins. So that was a big emphasis on being up in transition and just allowing our pins to do great too.
And then somebody that I'm sure you're game planning for this week is going to be Kennedy Martin, again, one of the best in the SEC. What is it about going up against some of the best in the conference? You've seen Sophie Fisher already. You've seen McKenna Skinner, I believe, from Texas already. How are going up against some of those players going to prepare you for Kennedy Martin?
Yeah, I think, all those players are great, but we try to treat them all with the same respect, and we try not to, over analyze them too much. We just treat them just like another player. But, when most of the balls go to one of those players, it's important to know and to key in on when it comes to blocking or defense, just trying to make sure we know where their tendencies are to attack, and just trying to be great about that.
And clarification, Madison Skinner, for those listening, of Texas, apologies. But this is obviously really big matchup, right? Both for the SEC race and for NCAA tournament implications. What would it mean for the program to beat the Gators, something that, I think hasn't happened in a couple of years?
I think it would be huge, but, we I think we're confident that we can win. I mean, we've beat some pretty big teams. I mean, we beat number 9 Texas. So I think we try not to get wrapped up on, the past or if they've won or not. We just try to focus on where we are and what we can do to, what's our best game plan to beat them and just to play as hard as we can. And I think that's what, the results will show.
And something entering this game that's really notable is there's been a lot of talk from the different coaches at Mizzou, whenever they're in a press conference or something, almost everybody's, shouted at the volleyball team, encouraged fans, to get to Hearnes Center on Friday. What's it been like seeing that involvement and the support from the other teams and coaches?
I think it's huge, just seeing their support and how they want us to succeed. And I think our marketing team does a great job of just trying to promote and get as many students and, families into our games. So, I mean, it's a great environment when it's packed. So I just think they do a great job, and seeing the support from the other coaches, it just makes it all worth it.
And obviously you've had a lot of packed crowds so far at Hearnes this year. Team is undefeated at home this season. How big of a factor have the fans been in that undefeated home record?
I think they really make a difference, especially when, other teams are serving their, our student section is always booing them or, doing something to just aggravate them. So I think it's huge. And when it gets really loud in here, it's hard to play in. So every single moment in here is just amazing.
And then is there anything else that you'd like to say to Mizzou fans before the match as we wrap up?
Come to Hearnes and support.
That is going to do it for today's episode of Over the Net. Thank you very much to Regan Haith for joining us. And if you'd like to see the Tigers in action, there is a marquee SEC matchup this Friday night at Hearnes Center. Number 21 Florida, number 25 Mizzou, two of the top 3 teams in the SEC. Everybody, thank you for watching.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.